out there. And hello to Vermont. Hello, Barbara, um,
Hi.
from California to Vermont. Welcome back to the Leadership with a Twist podcast. I'm your host, Heather McGonigal, here as always with my trusty sidekick, Barbara Schindler. And today we're going to talk about change because it's the one constant in life. And there is a lot of it these days with the rapid pace of change in business today. The way you hear AI all day, every day, in everything. Maybe if you're living in America, all of the information coming out of our current administration that seems to impact our lives. There's just information, information, change, change, change. What the heck is happening? And then we have our lives in the midst of it all. And guess what? It's a lot for our systems and ourselves to handle. So it got me thinking when one of my clients this week asked me, how do you I don't know if this is just me, she said, but I feel like I can only handle so much change. And I said, great awareness. I think change is one of those things that's on a spectrum where there are people that maybe are on the more risk taking adrenaline end of the spectrum and they love change and embrace change and maybe chase change a little bit, right? And there are innovators and there's people that are more avoidant and hate change the most and are more resistant when it comes to change. And there's people all over the spectrum and somewhere in the middle. And so when I say those two extremes, what do you recognize? Where might you sit in this? But the truth is, change is the one constant in life. It's something we always have to deal with. It's something it would be good to know, how am I with change and how do I help myself through change? And it's actually something Barbara and I work with and support clients through all the time. Change and transition, whether it's in relationship to themselves, their businesses, or a combination of it all, because you're the same person in work and in the rest of your life. So we often have to address the whole picture.
Yeah, I was coaching earlier today, and I remembered I was saying, like, you can't take the human element out
Mm.
of your working professional performance, right? It's like this person was like, yeah, like my feelings were hurt. And then he was trying to correct that. And I was like, no, you're human. Your feelings were hurt. And then, obviously have emotions and then think about the context, what relationship I'm in. This is my business relationship, this is about my role performance, whatever. And but you can't take the human part out of the fullness of who you are for your best performance, even too, like to be the best person in your role. But you mentioned something important, Heather. Change is this word that means something was one way and it's now going to be something else, or it is something else, right? It's different, right? But transition is such a key because we do need to integrate in a process, whether the change is coming from within myself or from something external. And often, the external is relating to the internal. So something happens outside of myself that I have no control over. It's something that's changed. Um, I need to change within myself in relationship to that, right? Maybe it's my thinking, my whatever. Like I do need to work with that. So the real thing we're talking about, especially with your client experience, is that transition.
Well,
What's happening in this relationship now with change?
yeah, and I wanted to share. I've been inspired because I'm reading this old business classic book. Well, I don't know if it's a business book. It's a life book
Yeah.
called Transitions, by Making Sense of Life Changes by William Bridges. And there's some really good nuggets in here. And to go along with what you're sharing in this moment, I wanted to add that he says changes are situational, and then the transitions are the psychological part that goes along
Mm,
with the situational change. And so I think that's really important. And what I found interesting so far and what I've been reading is he's been sharing, why in certain cultures there's rites of passage and different things to help you through some big changing times in life, right? We have big celebrations for marriages, baptisms at birth, like different things for big life changes that come along. And those are helpful in helping move people from one time of life into another time of life. And that this rite of passage ceremony helps with the psychological part of the transition that's going along with the change. But so what he's talking a little bit in this book about is how as a society as a whole, though, we don't have a lot of these rites of passage built into modern life. We've let go of a lot of them. So people face a lot of big changes without the support for the fact that something big has happened, psychologically, that they need to process and move through a phase of transition. It's also shared in this book that for transitions, there's usually an ending and a new beginning, but in there is also a messy middle. So there's an ending that you have to come to terms with, and there's a messy middle you often go through, and there's a new beginning that could be celebratory, but there's often something you have to let go of, right? When you're a new mom and you have a new child, that can be a great and joyous moment, but it's also an ending of your old way of being, your old life. And
Mhm.
society doesn't give people the space to, how do you grieve what your life used to be before this moment? Instead, you're just supposed to be happy for this life you don't even know how to fully do yet. For example, just using that as an example. Does that,
Right.
and you've been a mom, so does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense in any transitions. It kind of looks like a wave too. It's like when something new's happening, a new job, a new baby, a change, that's part of the structure of your life, let's say. There's that internal adjustment, that catching up with yourself. And sometimes, especially in the fast pace of our modern life, we'll get multiple changes and lots happening while a major change is happening, and you might have that feeling of needing to catch up with yourself. But I want to go back to the image of the wave because it kind of starts like there's more of the old way, how it's been, right?
Mhm.
And there's a sliver. There's like a
Of the new
sliver,
way.
right? And then that messy middle you're talking about is the time of transition. The creativity comes into that, and chaos, creativity. We sometimes fear that, but it means the old is breaking away, the new is integrating, and it can feel messy. And that's really how the new comes forward to be created. So all of a sudden, you're kind of in the middle, and there becomes more of the new, less of the old. There's kind of a dissolving. You're letting go. You're recognizing and integrating some of the new way, and then eventually there's very little of the old. That's the completion you're talking about. And the new wave is the new beginning. And sometimes when you actually reach that moment of the wave, you can't even remember what it was like before the wave started, right? Like it's like, I don't know how to
Yes,
think
now
like that anymore,
now
right?
you're in the new life so much that you
Yeah.
don't even remember what it was before. You
Right.
almost,
Like, how
yeah.
was I thinking that way? Because I think this way now. If the wave has done its work, you have integrated it through that transition. You've discerned some parts that you couldn't take with you, right? And other things that you had to embrace. And this is psychological, but it's also mental. It's like how you think, your mindset towards things. And often it calls for different behavior. A new mom might have to change their whole rhythm of
Yeah.
life, right? Type taking care of an infant or having different sleep patterns, might be taking time away from their career for maternity break, like all kinds of things to adjust to and integrate how that impacts yourself. And how you relate to that really makes a difference.
And I feel like new mom is a good example because it's something where, with all big changes, this is probably true, but it's a good example because we can probably picture it really clearly. But you have an idea of it, and you might have an idea of how you're going to handle it and how you think it's going to go and how you're going to do it. You maybe read the books, talk to your doctors, talk to your mom friends. You have your plan for how you're going to be a mom, and then it actually happens and you're living with the reality, and you maybe are feeling some feelings, and so knowing you have an ending in your life to grieve as you have this new beginning. And also, I don't know if it resonates with anyone out there, but for me, having that term of like messy middle, and like that's a natural part of the process, that kind of made me feel really good,
Yeah,
because it's like, okay, so it's supposed to get messy in the middle. It feels
it is.
messy in the
It feels
middle.
messy. It
I've
does.
I've lived through a lot of transitions where then I've been in my life like, wait, nothing, it doesn't make sense. I would like my life to make sense, please, right? And it doesn't really make sense. It feels like I'm paddling and I'm trying to tread water and I'm trying to see where I'm supposed to go, but I can't really see yet. And it feels really messy. So seeing that that was actually, a defined part of the process for me brought me this space to be kinder and more compassionate towards myself. Like, oh, this is a natural part of the process, Heather. You don't just have an ending and a new beginning, and you're just supposed to be happy about it. The other
Right.
thing, yeah. So, anyway, so,
I,
and
I was, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Well, just with the mom thing and this idea that you have an idea of how it's supposed to go, whatever
Mhm.
the big change is. And then you actually have to live with the big change. And as you're living into it, and that wave image you were sharing with us, Barbara, where they're in the wave and there's a sliver of the new and the old's there, and, um, it's like now we're coming to terms with, is this what I thought it would be? Wait, no, it's different. How am I doing? What is this what I wanted? Like kind of coming to terms with reality in the process too. I think
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
whatever the scenario is
What did I get myself into kind
yeah.
of experience? Well, and also this is important because, sometimes certain things are like, don't do this alone, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes there can be this, really the whole foundation of your control, let's say, of your life is being disruptive. And so part of that is that messy middle that can feel scary. And the more you work through patterns of change, really consciously be through those stages of transition, the more foundationally you have set yourself up to be able to find that stable ground even while the wave is moving, right? And so practicing this or getting support sometimes with if you can't hold your own ground, it's helpful to have your support system. It might be a coach, it might be a best friend, it could be a structure that you've put in place, knowing that this is going to be a big change in your life. And structure might be, I've given myself extra time to do some centering or taking a walk every day, remembering that we need to process. We can't just keep running, and we can't just do it in our heads, right? You're going to exhaust your brain. So that's part of it. I want to mention too, one of the ways I see this a lot in business is when you've been working in a functional role, right? And you're much more mindset of getting tasks done, less about meetings and strategic thinking, and needing to transition. You've done beautifully well in your role, and people, you get a promotion, you're now a manager or a director, and there is a struggle in that middle part. It's exciting,
The
it's wonderful.
transition, the shift.
Yeah, because it's like you're letting go of habits and ways of approaching work and work relationships that got you to where you are successfully, right? And then there's expectations, and often there's, whether they're self-imposed or your CEO or supervisor is part of the deal of putting some pressure on to be like, oh, but I got to be this different way now, instead of realizing there's a real integration of how you approach your work and the different rhythms and communications. And so this wave really comes in. I often see it's like, no, you're not there yet. It's okay. And what I see in coaching, I was just talking to a couple of CEOs this morning about this. You know, their middle manager is in this role for almost a year now, and it's like certain elements of business thinking at a higher level role responsibility in the organization. I think of it as it hasn't popped yet, that shift, Heather, that you're talking about. And I'm like, there's going to be a moment, probably 3 more months out, like there's still habits that
Mm-hmm.
worked before that aren't going, that are getting in the way. And it's a process, that messy middle place. And if you can realize that is a transition phase, right? Like I was predicting as a coach, I was like, I think in another 3 months, that shift is just going to pop, right? Where right now the thinking is old thinking, not really working hard to try to think differently in the role. So this is one place I see it a lot in transitioning in different positions within an organization that asks for different ways of performing who you are to get you the results you need in that role.
Yeah, and in my experience, I want to piggyback on this or highlight often when employees are moving from internally, so they're not being hired from the outside and we're not onboarding them fully into this new role as if they were hired from the outside and brought into the company. I think that sometimes some steps can get missed in supporting people in the transition phase to the new role sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
that can
Yes.
also, so it's in this case, this company has use first support and coaching support and all of that. But for our audience here, I want to point out and make aware when we're doing internal promotions and things like that, it's very important to think that we need an onboarding phase for moving the person into the new role. We need to support them and recognize there is a transition to this new role. There is training and development or resources needed or downloading new levels of information to them because they're holding a new level of responsibility, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that can sometimes get missed with these internal promotions. So that's
Yeah.
important to think
So
about.
promoting the structure of an onboarding process that keeps clarifying expectations and really offers some hands-on development training is essential for that, for this reason, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
so transitions are a natural part of life in your personal life, in your business life, in life in general, and they are the psychological part underneath the very visible change. The other thing that I wanted to share with everyone is that it is often what we do in coaching is support people. I'm often on a coaching call with the client, and at first they might be sharing, this has been a difficult week, these things have happened, I'm struggling with this, that, and the other thing. But then when I actually start digging in there with my questions, well, what about this and what about that, following up on some things that we're tracking as far as their positive progress and the business goals and the goals for their role. When I follow up with my questions, then all of a sudden they have wins to report. It's like, oh no, like this actually happened with the team, and then that happened, and then that happened. And I'm like, wait a minute, do you realize that you're telling me all of these success stories and wins right now? And so I just want to share that because what Barbara said, you could get a friend's support, you could get coaches' support through transition, but having the support is so important because on our own, we often miss the positive progress as we're moving through change because
Right.
it's so hard. The one thing that's hard about change for humans is that the way we are designed with our amygdala and our fight flight system is that we naturally don't really like change. In fact, we prefer what's familiar, even if it's not really that good for us. Why? Because it's familiar and we've figured out how to survive it. So our amygdala goes like, I don't know if we should change because I know how to keep you alive in this current situation. Even if it's not that good for you, logically, I know you won't die here, but this new thing, that I cannot predict, I cannot say, so you're safer over here. So our amygdala actually can think all change is bad.
Right. And we can definitely get attached to that without realizing consciously what's happening. Your primitive brain is kicking in, wanting to hold what is. And then again, that has a lot to do, which happens when your amygdala is kicking in, need to control. We cannot control the process of the transition. We want to actually work with it and keep getting ourselves foundationally one step at a time through it so that you can really move through it, not around it, not under it, because it will catch up with you. So that's that place where sometimes when people too much changes happen, will often say, I need to catch up with myself.
Which is wise to know. And so, all of these things, as you can see, I guess Barbara and I are pointing out a lot of different things, and we're going to keep talking about transition um, in the coming episodes as well as on other topics that are coming up. But transition, I think, is very valuable for us to talk at this current moment in time with everything that's happening. So, we will continue this conversation. But I hope that you've gotten some good insights for today. Please let us know in the comments below this video if anything is resonating with you. If you have any follow-up questions, we can answer on this topic in an upcoming video. And as always, if you'd like coaching support, there's links below this video where you can sign up for time on Barbara or my calendar. It is free of charge simply because we love what we do. We love to meet you, support you, and help you get coaching in this moment to be fully empowered and support you moving through change. So please take us up on this offer. We'd love to meet you. Otherwise, we hope you'll join us back here as we continue this conversation, supporting yourself, moving through change and transition powerfully. I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Barbara. Everybody, have a great rest of your day. We're cheering you on. Talk to you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.